let's have the Brad talk. So, I do want to point out before we get into the Brad talk, it's crazy how over the course of an 82 game season, the little moments can change everything. If you win that game in Vegas and hold on to a lead with 7 seconds left, maybe none of this is happening.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Maybe none of this is happening. Or if you don't blow a 2-goal lead. Or this.
Or you don't blow the lead in game 4 to the Panthers.
Or that. Well, that's going back real far, but
you can do that like Mitch Marner's probably still here if you close out game 7 or if you close out that game. Like, you could do that a million times, right?
I think he probably leaves regardless. But maybe, or like if Easton Cowan doesn't fall on his bum, like in a battle against Moritz.
That's
Seider,
pro sports.
That it is pro sports. But now here we are where I just don't think they're making the playoffs. And this pertains to Brad. So like I'm looking right now, the Bruins are the second wild card. You have to catch them. Between them and the Bruins is 5 points, but also the Panthers and also the Flyers, and you're tied with the Capitals and you're 1 point up in the Devils. And guys, there is a real chance this gets worse before it gets better. So I'm looking at it like it's over. Here's the Brad Treliving talk. When my dog Iggy passed away in August, I received...
Oh, way to bring it down.
I received a text from an Alberta number that I didn't recognize, and it was Brad Treliving, or he identified himself as Brad Treliving. I checked with Julian, who would know from his time in Calgary, and I checked with CJ, who would know because he's friggin' CJ. And they're like, yeah, no, that's Brad Treliving's number. And that's when I chose to respond to him because I don't know. I just couldn't wrap my head around it's Brad Treliving. I've never met the man. He was on our network, not on a show that I was on. Mm-hmm. You know, I've never met the man. I don't remember ever being in the same room as the man, never emailed with the man, never texted with the man. So for him to reach out was like really touching. And I was like, that's a great guy. That's someone that I'll always root for, on top of the fact that he's the general manager of my favorite hockey team. And I want to root for him because if he does well, then my favorite hockey team does well. And then my mental health does well. Right? I'm cheering for him. But for God's sake, I screamed for like a month, do something. And then we cheekily were like, do nothing. But that was a very short-lived little time. And now it's time to friggin' do something again. What has happened this season? They claimed Sammy Blais off waivers and lost him. Mm-hmm. They claimed Caden Primo off waivers, shouldn't have, and lost him. They signed James Reimer to a PTO, cut him after a game, and they claimed Troy Stetcher, which was good, objectively.
Sure,
right?
Small list when you look back.
It's a real small list. But every time I check any of the godforsaken doom scroll apps that we have, the Leafs are in on everything. They're in on Hamilton, and they're in on Shen, and they're in on Kadri, and they're in on this guy and on that guy. And do something! And now, I think part of the reason that they didn't do anything is they hadn't chosen a path. And here I am asking them, begging them to choose a path. There's a world where I think they could have a somewhat Boston-like retool. Boston is in the second wild card right now. There's no guarantee they make the playoffs. They're not a juggernaut by any means, even if they do make the playoffs. But I think they're in a really good spot. They're a pretty good mix of vets and young guys. They have their established culture, which is always going to be the Bruins' greatest strength, and they have goaltending. You could do like a fairly big sale this season and still have Matthews and still have Nylander and still have Nyes and still have Tavares and still have, you could re-sign Lawton and you could still have McCabe and Tanev will be back and hopefully he's healthy. And like the real integral parts of this team,
goalies maybe having a good training camp
and goaltending, right? And not just one goalie. You could have 3 who are really solid, right? Or you could trade one and get something for. That's a really good place to start. What doesn't this team have right now? Futures and prospects. They need youth and speed. Here's how you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how you do it. It's not happening for you. And the steps that you would have to take to make it happen for you don't make any sense. You can't spend more futures to preserve a season that's just going to end in April anyway. I don't think that makes any sense. Go out there, trade a guy like Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who's on a great cap hit and scientifically will very likely never be this good ever again.
Mm-hmm.
Trade a Nick Robertson. He already asked out. You could keep him too.
Mm-hmm.
It's up to you. You can take it or leave it there. I think you should keep Lawton for the culture. Nick Waugh has a year left at $3 million. I'd keep him as well. Dakota Joshua, I talked about extending him. Apparently, he actually has 2 years left after this one, so you could take it or leave it with him. You can't afford to make the same mistakes you made with Mitch Marner with Morgan Riley. Someone messaged me today because I said that in the LFR, and they're like, I have terrible news for you. You're going to have to retain on him. And my answer to that is it's a 32-team league, and just this past weekend, a 75-year-old special advisor to the Vancouver Canucks talked about how he didn't know what expected goals were.
Is that true?
Yeah,
I don't. Can you explain that?
It was,
I don't know
what
that
you're
one.
talking about.
Dale Talon. I don't have. Maybe you could look up the quote. Type in like Dale Talon.
Dale Talon, the GM, former GM Dale Talon?
Yeah, he works for the Canucks, and doesn't have time for these number nonsense. It's the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
Far dumber trades have happened.
Yep. And I think there are systems in which Morgan Riley could work really well. But what's pretty clear is that Berube's staying around. And I don't think he's working.
Boy, am I tired of hearing what they can't do.
Yeah.
God, I just don't care. Right?
Well, then, Steve, the question becomes, would you trust Brad Treliving with a retool?
This is the problem.
Because he spent assets on Lawton and Carlo, and I will maintain this. I think they were right to go for it last year. Lawton has worked out better than I thought he would. Carlo, I thought he was good last year. I don't think he's had a good season this year. He's been better since he's come back from injury. But the reality is that the assets that they spent to make that deal, I mean, you could have conceivably, if you put a better package together, maybe include Easton Cowan, that might have got you Quinn Hughes. Like, you think about that, right?
Wow.
Wow. Because you think about Zeev Buium is a better prospect than Easton Cowan. I get that.
No kidding.
But if you're including 2 firsts and Cowan, Minton, Gabrankin, and you're getting Quinn Hughes, is that a comparable package? Like, it might not be exactly, but you're closer.
I understand what you're saying.
They got to take Morgan. They got to take Morgan.
You got to take Mo because he's going home.
He's from BC. He's got to go back to Vancouver, hometown boy.
But you see what I'm saying? Like, it's like, we nibble around the edges with these high-value assets rather than packaging them together and getting, like, a real force. Or, and this is what we talked about on Friday. Okay, so you couldn't get the 3-way trade with Marner and Carolina to work out. So then you just tried to deal with Carolina to get Mikko Rantanen. Well, Marner wouldn't waive. They wanted Matthew Nyes. Drive Matthew Nyes to the airport.
Or how about this?
It's Mikko Rantanen, guys. It's Mikko Rantanen.
How about this? Marner refused the trade, understandably, because his wife was 7 months pregnant. You had 7. You knew that for how long? How long did the organization know that was a potential problem?
Yep.
Like, I think back to part of what made the NHL toying with John Scott's career so monstrous is, if I remember correctly, his wife was giving birth to twins.
Mm-hmm.
Like right around when he was sent from the Coyotes to Montreal in a garbage trade that made no sense.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And we were like, Jesus, man, like no one wants to deal with that. Right? So anyway, and I know Mo's got a young one. Everyone's got their own
reasons,
personal situation and everything, but you're running a business and you need a new look. You do. So filibustering everything. I think there's a world where the Leafs commit to not making the playoffs this year. They shed. They trade for futures. They trade for prospects. Maybe there's a couple roster players in there. And they come back next year, a younger, rejuvenated, quicker team that plays the current brand of hockey that's winning games.
Which is what? What's the current brand of hockey that wins games?
Listen, obviously...
Is that Berube style? Let me ask you.
Well, Berube won with a St. Louis Blues team that was pretty damn slow in an era that didn't score a whole hell of a lot. You need to be willing to and capable of beating the crap out of your opponent in order to win in the NHL. So there's always going to be that aspect. But the Florida Panthers can skate. The Florida Panthers team that, not the one that's scraping to get into the playoffs, but the Panthers that have been to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals, they can skate you into the dirt.
Mm-hmm.
So can the Vegas Golden Knights. They were big. They were mean. They can skate. The Avalanche they're one of the best skating teams in the league. How many years running? The Tampa Bay Lightning, all the teams that have had success in recent memory. You could throw the Carolina Hurricanes in there too, even though they haven't gone all the way. They've done extremely well. You have to be able to skate. You have to be able to move the puck.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not something that the Leafs do well. Like that game against Minnesota, Jesus wept. Like, you couldn't keep up with them. And Matthews talked about how one guy who can skate and move the puck really well in Quinn Hughes yard sailed your entire strategy. That can't be you anymore. It can't. And the team that you've built can't contend with that, can't contend with the way the league currently is, which certainly lends to the question, should Brad Treliving be the guy who digs you out of this? Well, you're looking at, if you're going to make a decision here and you're going to move off of him, you better do it now.
Mm-hmm.
You could bring in a new guy now. You have just before the Olympic break to get acquainted with everyone. Then you have the Olympic break to work the phones. Because the trade deadline's coming up right at the beginning of March. You have the trade deadline is in what, 6 weeks?
Mm-hmm. I think
you either make the decision now or Brad has to be the one to do it, because sitting here and letting all these contracts expire is not a decision.
It's even less than 6 weeks, because it's in actual like weeks where you can make trades. It's like 3 weeks, because it's going to be a month where you're not allowed to do anything.
Then let's go.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so sick of hearing they're in on stuff that doesn't happen. Yeah. Let's go.
Can I tell you a name?
Benoit. Let's go. Anything.
Can I